All right, Chris Carroll.
How you
Welcome
doing?
to VladTV.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
So, let's kind of lead up to your story, up to the tragic event that happened in Las Vegas that night. Why did you initially decide to become a cop?
Well, I initially started when I was a teenager. I had uncles that were both LA sheriffs, and I used to go right along with those guys when I was a teenager, and I knew right away, I'm like, man, this is for me, because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do up to that point. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer at the time, which is almost comical looking back at it for me, but I knew when I saw police work, I'm like, this is meant for me.
Okay. And you became a cop at what age?
21.
Okay.
I did my first, I hired on 21 years old with City of San Diego Police Department. I was there for 2 years, and I kind of wanted to go back to Vegas because that's where I'm from. So after I did 2 years in San Diego, I ended up going back to Las Vegas for another 23 years.
Okay. Now, during the 80s and 90s, what was happening in Las Vegas in terms of gangs?
Well, I tell you what, there's a big click up from the 80s to the 90s. Las Vegas in the 90s experienced a huge boom in growth. And there's a lot of growing pains that come with that, and including a lot of crime, a lot of people coming from other places of the country, all ending up in Vegas, and a lot of gang activity was kind of happening at that time. Up until the 80s, you're going to get some gangs in any city, but Las Vegas wouldn't be, certainly wasn't a hotbed of gang activity in the 80s. And then in the 90s, we kind of saw that coming in.
Mm-hmm. And was it Crips, Bloods, that type of thing?
Yeah, it was a little different back then because you had your Crips and your Bloods and various sectors of the Crips and the Bloods and a couple other, Hispanic gangs and so forth. And things are so different now because, instead of having a couple of large gangs, now it's just kind of like everybody's doing their own thing. And, one guy will belong to 3 different gangs. And, the gangs don't have, you see mixed races in gangs now, which you'd never see before. And just all these hundreds of little gangs all over the place.
Okay. So, leading up to the incident, you were a bicycle cop.
Right. I was a sergeant assigned to, I had a bike squad, which is me and about 12 officers on the Las Vegas Strip.
Okay. Now, why bicycles?
Bicycles are a great place to patrol a place like the Las Vegas Strip because the traffic is so thick. You have so many tourists, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of vehicle traffic, and most of the time you can actually get from one place to another better on a bicycle than you have in a car, than you can in a car.
Okay, but everyone was actually armed?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're still regular police officers working for the same police department. What we do is we take turns. Somebody would drive the paddy wagon that day. So whenever we arrested somebody on a bike, we'd have the paddy wagon come pick them up, and we'd handle every kind of police work that regular cops and cars do.
So the night of the Mike Tyson fight, you were actually by yourself on a bike.
Yes.
Now, a lot of times, don't cops have their partner with them?
They always have a partner with them when they're on bikes. But I was a sergeant of the unit, so typically I would work alone, and I'd go around to different calls that the different officers are going to on their bikes. So I'm kind of their supervisor. And occasionally I would ride with another officer or something, but this night I was alone.
Okay. So tell me about what was going on in Vegas the night of this fight.
Well, it was Mike Tyson fight night, and Mike Tyson fight night, it was, no matter who he's fighting, the biggest night going on in Vegas. I mean, he probably had, three fights a year or so, and those were always huge events in Las Vegas. And it was a lot bigger than the fight itself, and particularly when Mike was fighting. When Mike was fighting, it wasn't like when anybody else was fighting. If Mike was fighting, it was an event. It was like the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, and we'd get a lot of people come down from all over the world, actually, but a lot of people from California, and a lot of gang influence coming in for the Tyson fight. So you'd see a lot of activity on the Las Vegas Strip. Gang activity and not gang activity, a little bit of everything going on.
So you would see fights, shootings, that type of thing?
Yes, it was. There was a lot of people that came in town. They wouldn't even go to the fight. They just are there for the whole big event, and a lot of times that came with a lot of trouble. So it was busy. It was always really, really busy, and a lot of stuff going on. A lot of fights, shootings, stabbings. I mean, pretty much everything you could think of would go on during the fight night. And it's nothing would ever happen during the fight. It's like the world stood still while the fight was on, and as soon as it was over, bam, everything starts.
So after the fight happened, there was the altercation between Tupac and his entourage and Orlando Anderson.
Right.
The fight occurred. Did you know about it while it was happening?
I did not know about it at the time. It didn't come up later until the investigation started. And while we know now, in hindsight, that it was a significant factor in the events of the night, at the time, what we have basically is a fight between a group of guys. Nobody's armed. There's nobody shot. There's nobody stabbed. There's no shots fired. And they have their fight, and they kind of disperse themselves, really, and go their separate way, and it's over. So it was almost really, as far as the police were concerned, kind of a non-event.
So the death row entourage ends up leaving the MGM.
Right.
And Suge Knight and Tupac are in the BMW.
Correct.
And I guess they get pulled over.
You know what? I've heard that. I don't know of that personally, though. I've never had anybody tell me that they were the ones who pulled them over. But word is that I've heard that they were stopped sometime during that night for a traffic stop, loud stereo, something to that effect, and they just told them, "Hey, turn your stuff down. See you later." And that was the extent of that traffic stop.
Okay, so there's no ticket?
There's no ticket.
Okay, and did you talk to the officer who did that?
I did not. I've never heard anybody, for me personally, I don't know who it was.
Okay, so we don't know if it actually happened or not.
Exactly. I could not tell you for sure that happened.
Okay, so let's fast forward to later that night. You were on your bike.
Right.
And what happens?
Well, it's after the fight and things are busy, and there's all kinds of stuff going on up and down the strip. I was on my bike, right side, just on the what would be the north side of the MGM, because there was a lot of activity over there. I was on my bike, and over the radio, some other officers came on and said there's shots fired at the corner of Flamingo and Koval, and that there were vehicles fleeing the scene. So it's actually the officers hearing the shots and putting it out over the air. So they, as the group of vehicles fled, they started to give chase. So they're on bicycles, and they weren't able to keep right up with them, but they didn't completely lose them either, because traffic is thick and it's hard to go fast in a car in that area. So they broadcast their location and the way they were going while they're chasing the vehicles, and they're just saying, everything's in generalities at that point. There's been shots fired, and they're they don't know which car is involved, but they're chasing a group of cars on their bike, and they're headed westbound on Flamingo, which is towards the Las Vegas Strip.
So they were chasing basically the death row cars.
Right. A group, and that's the thing, is we don't know at the time, and there's still some unanswered questions about that, but they're chasing a group of cars, which, of course, as it turns out, one of those cars is Suge and Tupac.
Right, in the BMW
Yes.
7 Series.
Right.
So no one actually chased the car that was doing the shooting, which was the Cadillac?
No.
No. Okay.
No. But you got to understand, they don't know which car is the shooter
Yeah.
at the time. They just hear the shots from, I think they were in a parking garage. So they're a couple of stories up and a few hundred yards away, and they just hear the shots come from the group of cars.
So how do you arrive on the scene?
They said they were heading towards the Strip, and I was already on the Strip, so I started heading northbound, and they were, as they're in pursuit, we're heading in the same directions. The group of cars is heading towards me, I'm heading towards them. So as they reached this, they're going down Flamingo, they hung a left on Flamingo, which puts them southbound, which is going towards the MGM and towards me. So I was going northbound. So we're literally heading towards each other. And my concern at the time, I was on my, like I said, I'm on a bicycle. I'm thinking, how am I going to stop these guys? And I don't know, but we'll see. You know, I'm still going to head there and we'll see what happens. You know, usually we use hand signals, whistles, and things, and people will almost all the time pull over for them if you pull over for you if you direct them to. But these are guys that are already running from the police, so I figured I'd do what I can. If I can't stop them, I can't stop them. But there I am. So I was heading northbound. They were heading southbound. As we hit Harmon, which is a street that T-bones right into the Strip, they tried to make a left turn onto Harmon. And as they did that, I was coming right up on Harmon. So Suge's car, Suge and Tupac's car, had already blown out 2 tires from hitting a curb during this chase, and you could see on the rims of the car where there's been a significant impact on the car. So when they made the left turn, kind of at a high rate of speed, they sort of spun out there in the intersection. And right as they spun out, they're literally spunning out, and I'm running right into them. So I'm right there. So it wasn't a matter of me getting to the scene, we really ran into each other. So I kind of laid down the bike. The cars came to a screeching halt. Tupac's car kind of spun out a little bit out of control there in the intersection. And I knew that one of these guys, one of the cars at least, was involved in a shooting, but I had no idea who anybody was. So as soon as the cars stopped, the doors popped open, and everybody kind of just jumped out to see what was going on. And I pulled out my gun, and I tried to yell at everybody to get down on the ground. I knew I was in a bad situation because I was alone, and it was physically in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip. So there's people everywhere. These car doors open. There's, I don't know how many guys, I want to say 8 to 10 guys. I could tell right away, you know, these guys were kind of hardcore. They looked like gangsters, you know, tough looking dudes. So I yelled at them all to get on the ground. Some did and some didn't. You know, some guys did, and then I could see them looking at each other like, you know, are we going to listen to him, or are we going to run, or are we going to go after him? You know, it was just kind of a strange little standoff there for a few seconds, and I wasn't sure what to do either, because I thought for certain it was going to be a shooting. I thought for sure, I'm like, here we go. It's going to be, we're going to shoot it out here right in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip. And as ridiculous as it sounds, one of the things in my mind at that time was, I'm going to get in so much trouble for being in a shooting in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip. It was just a bad situation, but that's, you know, that's how we all ended up there. I'm going kind of person to person, running around, hopping, moving, and I'm so concerned about where the shot's going to come from, because I'm still thinking that there's going to be a shooting. And no shot came, no shots fired. And that's when I noticed that of all the cars, and everybody was kind of out, there was one car, and I can still see a guy sitting in the passenger seat of the car. And I thought, in my mind, this is probably the guy that's going to try to shoot me, because everybody else is out of the cars there's there. And, you know, nothing's more dangerous than a guy still sitting in the car, because he's got access to everything all around him, and you can't see him. You know, all I can see is, you know, from the shoulders up in the window. And I figure this is probably the guy that's getting ready to shoot me. So I kind of keyed my attention on him, maybe even to a fault, you know, kind of tunnel visioned on that guy. And I came up to him, I was yelling at him to open the door. When I came up in the car, I could see that there was bullet holes all in the side of the door. Their bullet holes were kind of right around the handle, and there was also one or more in the windshield right in front of the passenger side. So I was approaching on the passenger side.
I guess the car had been shot 13 times?
You know, I couldn't tell you the exact number, but there were definitely multiple hits on the car. So I reached over, and I was not going to let this guy sit in the car and take me out, so I grabbed the car door, pulled the door open, and I was having a hard time getting the door open. And I think, and I'm still not positive, but I think the bullets being in close proximity to the handle itself, I think they somewhat disabled the mechanics of the door handle. And I was pulling it and couldn't get it open. So, which was just making me even more concerned. I'm like, I got this guy here and now I can't even open the door. And I just pulled it and finally it popped and it came opened. When I pulled the door open, now we've still got people running around, people are yelling. I'm trying to watch these other guys a little bit. And now I've got, at this point, Suge Knight is coming up behind me. And, I'm looking at him, and here's this guy is giant, and I'm just like, man, this is a bad situation for me. And I pulled the door open, and when I pulled it open, the guy sitting in the passenger seat, who turns out later to be Tupac, he kind of slumped out, came out with the door. So he's in the car, he's leaning against the door, and as I open the door, he kind of spills out. So he spilled out, and I just kind of grabbed him with one hand, and then I was pointing the gun at Suge with the other, because Suge is still trying to run up to me, and the guy's clearly a threat. He was also just absolutely gushing blood out of the side of his head, but he's acting fine. I mean, he's not incapacitated in any way. He's shooting blood out of his side of his head, and he starts yelling at Tupac, and he's yelling at him, "Pac, Pac," and he just keeps yelling, "Pac." And I can see, then I look down, I can see Tupac is trying to yell back to Suge, and he's just kind of not physically able to do it. And he's kind of, you can see him sort of mouthing, and they're in eye contact with each other. And he's trying to get something out to yell at Suge, and he can't get the words out. But he's still, he's fully conscious. He's moving. He's kind of squirming, and that's when I looked at him, and there was, an extensive amount of blood on him, and I saw that he had. I couldn't tell exactly where it was, but he had clearly had torso wounds, which are, of course, almost always going to be life-threatening. So I realized then this guy has a good possibility of dying. So I looked at him and I said, what happened? Who shot you? Who did this? What's going on? And he's just really just kind of ignoring me. He's not even, even though I'm right there holding him, he's just kind of not acknowledging my presence, and he's trying to yell back at Suge. Well, I turned around at Suge, and that was the first time I noticed. I saw the back of another bike officer, and he was pushing Suge away from me, and that's the first time I realized there's other cops there, so that made me feel a lot better. So he kind of pushes Suge back, and Suge is still yelling, "Pac, Pac." He's trying to yell at him, and then I saw Tupac just, all of a sudden, just in an instant, he went from trying to, kind of squirming, looking at Suge, trying to get the words out, to where you could tell he physically just gave up. He just wasn't able to do it. And he just crossed that line into just quitting and being at peace. And he just kind of laid back and was calm and was no longer looking or trying to do anything. And I could just see that he was just, it's kind of like almost like an athlete or a runner when they hit that wall, and it's just like it's over, and you could see that in his face. And I looked at him once again. I said, "What happened? Who did this? Who shot you?" And now he's looking at me, so we're looking at each other in the eyes, and this is kind of the first time he's even acknowledging my presence. And he looked at me, and I could tell he was getting a breath together to tell me, and he looked me right in the eyes, and we looked at each other, and he said, "Fuck you." And he said it just like that, with the emphasis on that F, to really let me know. That's how he felt. So he said that, and right after he said it, he just kind of started gurgling, and you could tell he was in bad shape, and his eyes, he's starting to lose consciousness then, and his eyes roll back. And as it turns out, that would be his last conscious moment and his last words.
So once he realized that you were a cop, and I guess you were asking him because there's something called a postmortem.
In police work, we have something called a dying declaration.
Yeah.
And basically what that is if someone is dying and believes they're dying, whatever they tell you, if you can get that information, is not hearsay in court. If you need to go in court and testify what they said, those statements are open season. It doesn't happen a lot. I've only, him and one other guy in my 25 years of police work, where I've had a dying declaration situation.
But once he realized that you were a cop, he didn't want to have anything to do with you.
No, I think he just he didn't feel like I think the guy was pissed. I think whether he knew he was going to die or not, I mean, who's to say? But he seemed like a guy that was pissed off that he was in the situation he was in, and he's trying to talk to his friend, and I think he just viewed me as an obstacle and somebody asking him something he didn't want to talk about. And, so he let me, he told me what he told me.
And you had said that Tupac had a bunch of jewelry on him, and the jewelry was covered in blood.
He had a lot of gold jewelry, and that's always, when I think back, I mean, I remember the whole night well, and I remember that just the thick gold jewelry just being coated in blood, to where that blood was just kind of coagulating right there in that jewelry.